Hi, Nick Maxwell here to talk a little bit about the CGY750 V2 update for the governor. So there have been a couple parameter changes and naming changes to try to simplify governor performance and to make it work the best it can on Nitro and electric. If you were previously using version 1.31 or 1.4, then nothing in your transmitter is going to change for your actual governor setup. I'm not going to go over an entire governor setup just because that's covered in the manual, and it would basically more or less you just set your, once you get done with this and once your S-bus is set correctly, you're pretty much done. So the first thing that what you need to do is get to the Swash Set Basic. The very second parameter is the operation mode. If you have gyro plus throttle activated, you're not going to see any gyro governor parameters. You're going to see a title and like a limit, and other than that, nothing. So make sure that you go ahead and set this to gyro plus throttle, or excuse me, gyro plus governor from gyro plus throttle, and then exit Swash Set Basic and go to Governor Basic. So the first parameter is going to be your RPM set. In this case, by say whatever your RPM channel is set to in your S-bus, and whatever you've got set in your governor menu as you cycle through, it's going to give you your different RPMs, and they're just simply going to display here. If they are off just a little bit, what you can do is actually tune those by hitting the plus and minus button. So say you're showing 1505 or 1510, but your transmitter shows 1500. By simply just using the plus or negative button, you can get that lined up. Okay, next parameter is your gear ratio. This is just whatever your motor gear ratio or whatever your pickup is. So if you're using a electric helicopter with a magnetic sensor and it's on the tail rotor, which is say a 5:1, you would set this to 5:1 then. And on the Nitro, obviously, whatever your main to main gear ratio is, and on the electric, it would be the same thing. Okay, the next parameter is your pole number. If you're using electric, just whatever your pole number is, so this motor is 10-pole motor, I would set this to 10. If it is Nitro, just go ahead and leave it at 2. The next type is servo type, analog or digital. Obviously, if you're flying a Nitro helicopter, if you're using a digital servo, that's fine. If you're running electric, most guys have found that it works the best on analog. The next parameter is the stick switch. So if you have stick switch activated, this will be the position at which it turns on. So as you can see, the number will go up and down with your throttle curve. You can actually change the position that this turns on and off by simply hitting the negative data button, or excuse me, plus data button. So say it's turning on at 30%, but you want the governor to turn on at 10%. Change your stick position to 10%, and hit the plus button. Next parameter is the on-off switch. Now this is if you have GVS set to a channel. If that's the case, and when you turn this on, your governor will turn on-off with a switch, and your stick position will no longer matter. The next one is limit set. So this is simply whatever your lowest throttle value is and whatever your highest throttle value is. In this case, you would do this after you set the endpoints of your ESC. Rev Sense, this is simply going to show how much what your revolution sensor is picking up. With the BPS-01 or BPS-1, the backplate sensor, you're going to see like a maximum of 23. With a magnet, you can see as high as 96. With the electric, it honestly depends on if you're using phase sensor, Castle Creations internal phase sensor, or whatever you're using. Just make sure that when you turn the motor and things, it's going to work. So sensor type. What this does, sense type, excuse me. What this does is, so for different types of motors, the internal speed has to be changed of the gyro or the governor operation. So low pole EP is for motors 6 poles. We found that the 6-pole motor needs a little bit different operation speed due to the update rate. So we have a low pole, high pole, which is 8 pole or higher. Oops. Nitro mode, so if you're setting Nitro, simply put it on Nitro. And then a 1-to-1 magnet. Some guys are putting the magnets in the main gear as a 1-to-1. If you are using a 1-to-1 type setup or direct drive type setup, you will go ahead and want to use 1-to-1. Okay, governor gain is a condition selected value, and this is purely your governor gain. If you're seeing an oscillation like a stutter, your gain is too high. If you're seeing drastic sagging, or like the governor really isn't keeping up with your collective pitch inputs, you probably need to raise the gain up. Low limit RPM is between, I think 700 is the lowest, and 1500 RPM. So what that does is how far the throttle will pull down between that RPM range. This is also condition selectable, so you can have two values for this. And this is simply just take it up, punch out, come back down. If it overspeeds or if the motor's overspeeding, then you need to pull the low limit down. If it is not overspeeding and sagging, then raise that number up. High limit RPM is the exact same parameter, but it's for ranges of 1501 up to 2300, 2100, whatever the maximum is that you have set. Okay, that covers governor basic. We're going to go ahead and go into expert menu. Okay, work mode. This is either set to governor or rev limiter. A rev limiter, what it does is works off your throttle curve. So your RPM is going to change off that, but it will just keep it at that RPM. And then if you need to advance throttle, you'll have to actually have a throttle curve to advance the throttle, but it will keep it from overspeeding. Governor mode is, once the governor is turned on, it will keep it at whatever your set RPM is. Rotor display, or rev display, that's just if you want it showing on the rotor or not. So if you set it to rotor, it's going to show what your head speed is. If you set it to engine, it's going to show you what your motor RPM is. And that is on the home screen. Okay, feed forward cyclic. This is taking your cyclic controls into account and bumping a little bit of throttle into the governor control when you load it with cyclic pitch. Yaw comp is for the tail rotor. So as you apply right rudder, you're going to load the motor. So it will give a little bit of extra rudder. If when you give left rudder, the motor is obviously going to unload. So it reduces throttle pre-compensated inside the gyro, so that way it kind of just helps the governor, and it may give you, some of these compensations will make it feel like it has a little bit more power because it can react faster. So by this setting, there's a CW top, CW bottom. There's 4 settings. That is actually how your sensor is mounted. So in this case, I have my sensor mounted, labeled to the top, and the rotor disc is clockwise. So in that case, we're going to leave it like that. That will compensate normal. Okay, rev up delay. This is simply how quickly it reaches desired RPM. Rev down, when you're changing RPMs, how quickly it spools for, slows down between the different RPMs. Start delay, this is when the governor kicks in, how quickly or aggressively it tries to reach your maximum RPM. Low revo, that is actually how low it will take it before it kicks in. So if you have a really rich motor, or if you have a really low RPM, you might need to change that a little bit so that way the governor doesn't pull out if you go too low. So that concludes the basic setup and also expert tuning of the governor. And so click more to follow other videos and see the swash plate setup, your flight tuning, and your tail rotor setup.